So you get the right person in there who's going to do the job and is going to take pride in the job, and you can teach them how to do it. And they're going to learn fast because they're good people.
Welcome back to another episode of Angels, Exits, and Acquisitions. I'm your host, Jeff Barnes. And today I'm speaking with John Martinka. And John is an advisor for business owners who are looking to sell or exit their business. And he helps them through that entire process. We had a great conversation about what it takes to actually exit your business properly. What are some of the big key things you need to look at before you plan on exiting your business? What are some of the mental things you need to be aware of and prepared for? And ironically, one of the humorous dark sides of selling your business that you may not be aware of and need to think through. John's also the author of How to Exit with Style, Grace, and for More Money. So very great conversation, and look forward to hearing your comments about this one. Take care.
Welcome to Angels, Exits, and Acquisitions, the place to learn how to fund, scale, exit, and massively profit as an angel investor or entrepreneur. Brought to you by the Angel Investors Network. And now, here's your host, Jeff Barnes.
Welcome back to another episode of Angels, Exits, and Acquisitions. I'm your host, Jeff Barnes. I'm here today with John Martinka. John, how are you doing today?
I am doing great. It's a beautiful, semi-beautiful Monday morning here.
Wonderful. Well, yeah, we're not too far away from each other. And it was cold and windy and wet over the weekend, but then the sun did break through for a little bit yesterday. So it has been nice out here in the wintertime, or going into the wintertime here in the lovely Pacific Northwest.
Yep.
So, John, before we dive into all the questions I have for you about your business and your career, why don't you tell people a little bit about yourself?
Okay. So as you said, we live in the same area outside of Seattle, and I have been in the buy-sell/M&A world for almost 30 years now. And I got, like a lot of people in their careers, I got into it through serendipity. A person who became a good friend as we were back-to-back presidents of a small Rotary club one day said something like, "I've always thought you'd be good in this business." And one thing led to another, and having fun. I've had one of my daughters working for me, with me for the last 7 years now, which has been quite a thrill.
That's awesome. And you're an author of a book, right? How to Exit with Style. How's it? Exit with Style,
Grace, and More
Style,
Money.
Grace, and More Money. There we go. I want to make sure I got that right. Style,
That's my
Grace,
fifth
and More
book.
Money. Wonderful. So why'd you tell us a little bit about that? What made you decide to write that book?
First of all, it's a follow-up to a book I wrote a number of years ago on how you get the business ready for an eventual exit. And that book has the title of "If They Can Sell Pet Rocks, Why Can't You Sell Your Business for What You Want?" And it had very little to do with the process of selling the business. So, and then one thing after another, we got hit by COVID. Right before that, my daughter started working for me, so that took a lot of time, and I finally got around to doing it. But and I'll say it starts out with the first chapter has basically nothing to do with the business. It's about the owner having the mindset and what they need to do to be ready to personally leave. So and then we go into, things a short bit on, the big overriding issues of getting the business ready, and then goes into the process of matchmaking and what the buyer's going to ask and due diligence to deal structure and everything else.
That's awesome. So we have clients that come to us. A lot of the times it's for raising capital. In some cases, they're in our database, on our list, and they're learning about this process of becoming an angel investor or investing in deals or taking chips off the table, so to speak, because they have an existing business. A lot of folks that work with us are existing business owners, and their businesses, for the most part, operating without them. Not 100%, but maybe 80% of the time they don't even need to be there anymore. So they're looking for something new and exciting to do, and this becomes an option. However, one of the reasons they've never sold their business completely is because of some of the things you just mentioned. They don't know who to sell to. They don't even know the process of selling. And I want you to talk a little bit about that mindset of the business owner being ready to sell. What do you mean by that?
Well, for a lot of owners, especially founders, it literally is their baby. It's like another child, and they get attached to it, and it can be tough to leave. So you have to be ready. And one of the first questions I ask is, have you talked to a financial advisor? Because when you sell a business, you are not going to replace the cash flow that you had from the business. Your salary, your profit that you're able to take out in distributions, it's not going to come close. So you have to be ready. And have you talked to a financial advisor to put a plan together and make sure, is this enough money? If I can sell it for X or Y or Z, it doesn't matter. And then another question is, what are you going to do? And because if the answer is wishy-washy, they're probably going to get some seller remorse as they go through the process going, what am I going to do all the time? You can only play so much golf. You can only go to so many beaches. And then, the next one is a little semi-humorous. Part of it is if what you're going to do is retirement, does your spouse want you around 24/7?
It's humorous, but that's a real thing. When I was in the Navy, we found out that the vast majority of people that got married while they're in the military end up getting divorced within a couple of years of getting out of the military or getting put on shore leave, right, where they're stationed at home now. And it was because they built this entire relationship on, you're gone most of the time. So I get to have my cake and eat it too, right? I get to have my independence and have a spouse. And, so we found that I do think it's kind of a dark humor, but it is humorous, right? And making sure that all those little boxes are checked are not as easy as a lot of people think.
That's right. Yeah. And as a little follow-up on that, I said that line to a wealth manager earlier this year, and she came back with about a client, and she said the wife came to her and said, after the business was sold, and said, I signed up for dinner, not breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
I laugh about that. I've been divorced, I'm remarried. And, the first time around, it was a situation like that, right? We ended up getting married and we lived together, of course, and we saw each other regularly, but I was always traveling. And then at some point it was like, you're always here. What's going on? And it's a different type of relationship altogether. So it is definitely a communication and a personal relationship issue, more so than just a financial issue.
Do you agree with that? It's emotional.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned in one of our conversations about owners want to take some chips off the table. And you see a lot of that, especially as companies get larger, that the professional buyer will want them to keep some chips on the table. But even on smaller buy-sell deals in the SBA loan range, SBA loans now go up to $5 million. So it's not much more than that. They can now have a partial buyout or what's known as equity rollover to keep some of the company, and maybe stay active as a salesperson or product designer, whatever their skill is. Because a lot of these people, as you probably have run into, they got into the business to do what they like doing.
Right.
And they're like a recent client of ours who, when we met him, and it's a very profitable business, 7 figures, not many employees, like 10 or so. And he said, first conversation, I'm managing about 10 people. That's my limit. I can't manage anymore. But there's so much growth that could happen. And saw him a month ago, and he said, I'm having more fun than I've had in years because I'm not doing all the administrivia of the business. I'm just doing what I want to do with clients.
Did you just call it an administrivia?
Yeah.
I love that. I'm going to have to steal that. That's a great one. Because, inside of AIA at Angel Investors Network, not only do we help companies with raising capital just to kind of get going, that's actually a smaller part of our business nowadays. We're actually helping companies with raising capital for buyouts, right? Not full on private equity, but there are private equity funds and whatnot. But there are companies that are like, hey, I want to go acquire this other business. And how do I raise money for that? Because the bank's not going to give me debt for everything I need. I need to go find investors to do this. And believe it or not, even though there are angel investors that like the startup, there's a lot more people that like the consistent cash flow of investing in something that's proven. And along those lines, when we work with these people who are selling their business, that's the number one reason that a lot of people are selling that we found. It's not I want to retire. It's I don't want to deal with the minutia anymore.
Yeah.
I want to do the one thing that I really got in this business to do that's made me a lot of money, but now I have to deal with all the other stuff and I don't want to deal with that. Are you finding that that's one of the main reasons people are coming to you, or is there something else?
That's one of the reasons. If you look at why people sell a business, you've got your catastrophic events: divorce, death, disability. Maybe a spouse having serious health issues, something like that. But for most of it, people, it's some form of retirement or partial retirement or burnout, and it's burnout when they're doing this more often when they're doing the things they really don't want to be doing. And of course, there's a flip side to that, because if they're just doing the fun stuff, the integral stuff for the product and service, they've created an owner dependency, as in who's going to replace them and be able to do that work. So it's a balancing act.
Well, let's talk about that, especially the burnout piece, because like you said, burnout happens. The way that I describe burnout is it's not that you're literally just burning the candles like both ends and you're getting exhausted, because we've seen people that when they're doing something they love, they have energy 18 hours a day. And it's kind of amazing to watch them do this, right? But when all of a sudden they start doing things that are either outside their comfort zone, not moving them towards a goal, or feels like it is just something that it's foreign to them, or they're being forced to do it. It's almost like indentured servitude to their own business is what some people will describe it as. So when you guys identify burnout as a cause for people wanting to leave, what are some of those things that you work with them on? I'm assuming you work with them on this. Maybe I shouldn't assume, but I'd imagine that by doing that, it helps increase the enterprise value so they can have a better exit.
Well, I just used the term owner dependency, and sometimes they get burned out on the minutia as we talked about, and sometimes it's just they're working too much.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of owners and founders have a really hard time delegating, right? And if they can delegate and realize, yes, your people are going to stumble a little bit, but you're there as the safety net. So they take, it's like stumbling over a step, not off a deck. And that's a big one. I'll give you an example of a client from, it's about 10 years ago now. I've done 5 projects with them over the years, on an acquisition or two, a possible sale that got derailed by COVID. But in the meantime, the owner was complaining that he wasn't making much money, and came in, did a lot of interviewing, a lot of research, etc., and came back and said, here's your problem. You're the bottleneck. Everybody says everything in the company has to go across your desk, and you can't keep up with it. And we put in a delegation plan. And I remember what he said. Well, my people are coming to me complaining now because I've delegated so much to them. I said, well, teach them how to delegate to others.
I'm not going to say it's leadership 101. It's part of management, right? But management and leadership is definitely different. But it is one of those things. It's humorous in the sense that every business owner can probably relate to that, right? I know I can. I've been that guy, and in certain areas still am that guy. Things need to come across my desk. And there are certain things that you don't delegate, right? You don't delegate, everything inside the business, because there are certain things that, like, making sure that the cash flow is happening. You don't just say, okay, somebody else go figure that out and let me know if it's working. But you do want to have people who are helping you to organize all of that, right? And so a business owner might listen to that and say, yeah, I struggle with that too. But I don't know how to delegate because, and they have a lot of reasons, but I think the number one reason is because no one else will do it as good as me, right? And what do you say to that person?
I can tell them through just my experience over the last short number of years, it's tough. I've had my daughter working with me for 7 years. We have another associate. And it just takes sitting back and saying, I'm going to let them do these things. We have one client where we have a short list of potential purchasers of the company before we would actually go out to market. And it's tough to say, you take that handful, I'll take this handful, the other person, you take the rest, and have faith that they're going to do it. And report back that they've done it and done it correctly. So it is a mindset you have to get over. And that's where, someone coaching them, advising them, can make a big difference.
Before continuing, please subscribe and share this video to help us reach more people and stay notified of our latest releases. Now, let's continue watching and learning.
How much does learning management systems and knowledge transfer, how much does it play into that exiting with style and grace piece?
It plays in a big part, and it really ties in with, just be a good person to start with. Treat your people well. I mean, look at the employment market. One of my 7 key factors to increase value is be able to hire and retain great people. If you can't keep them,
yeah,
what's the use?
So I can't remember if it was Stephen Covey. I know he said right people, right bus, right seat. Or if it was John Maxwell that was talking about A players, B players, C players, right?
Yeah.
So the A players hire A players because they want to be surrounded by the best. It's like Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan choosing who's going to be on their team, right? And having a really, strong say in that. Tom Brady knowing who's going to be his receivers and his running back. Versus B players, he said, will hire C and D players because they're really worried about that person taking something away from them. And they need to feel superior to those individuals in some way. And so when you're coaching or working with these clients of yours, how much of the conversation kind of tailors around that so that they can overcome these situations and have other people that they can delegate to?
It's a big part of it, and it can be a tough one that they have to do that. They have to bring in those people. The old adage, your A people would say, I want people smarter than me. And the sales manager who says, I want my salespeople making more money than me because then I'm doing my job.
Right.
And it's not just the skills. So I'm going to give you, Jeff, I'm going to give you a couple of references to local companies here in the Seattle area. So I'm friends with the president of Ivers and the CEO of Top Pot Donuts, and they both subscribe to, and might not be their exact words, hire for values, train skills.
Right.
So you get the right person in there who's going to do the job and is going to take pride in the job, and you can teach them how to do it, and they're going to learn fast because they're good people.
Well, that comes down to you have to have a system for training people too, right?
That's right.
I think this is where, when I was in the military, then when I worked for really big companies, really, really great at this, right? Because I didn't have to worry about a lot of the hiring. I did hundreds of interviews to hire people for me, but especially in the Navy, you don't have a chance to hire anybody. They just show up and you're like, well, I got what I got. But we had an amazing training program. Here you are, 19, 20 years old, running a nuclear power plant, driving a submarine, dealing with warheads, guys going overseas and, going against bad guys and live fire drills and all this. And we're talking teenagers, right? And so I've always had this mindset that, okay, if a teenager can run a nuclear power plant or be entrusted to carry weapons around and without killing themselves or the people right next to them on accident, they can probably do a lot of other things. But in order to do that, you have to have a really robust training program. And I have found that most founder owners, as you talked about, are absolutely terrible at that because it's all up here and they forget to impart that knowledge in some way to the next person. And how do you deal with that? How what are some of the tools that you give them or guide them through so that they can start doing that? Because I'd imagine I know that's a really important piece to having a smooth transition.
I don't do that kind of training for people. It really it's conversations and it's asking questions and to find out where's the sore spot. Where's the problem? And, if you look at the hospitality industry, there are a lot of mediocre performing restaurant businesses. And, sometimes you go in and I can think of a couple of times and the server would say, well, this is my first day. This is my second day. And they really didn't know what they were doing because no one gave them any training.
Right.
But you'd look at some of your more successful restaurants and they grow because they take a real interest in their people and having them do the job. I don't know exactly how they train them, and every business is different. It's just like
Right.
sales. Uh, you have good sales managers who don't know how to who do know how to train, but you get a lot of people thrown in the sales management role because they were a super salesperson. And that doesn't make a good manager. So it's finding the right people to do that training and impart those skills.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you need a team.
Absolutely.
If you have a good management team and below it a good operational team, you've really cut out owner dependency a lot. And that is a big issue from companies that are worth $5 million to $50 million. Earlier this year, I was at an industry event, and it was a panel discussion. And the key person on the panel was a partner in a business that just sold for, I think it was $70 million. And he said as they went through the process, he and his partner realized we do way too much on a granular level. It's mind step. It's in the mind, okay? And you got to, sometimes have to play a game in that mind because you want to take that step to shed things. Tough thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what are some of the other, big mistakes that these founder owners make when, either setting up their business or preparing for an exit?
Okay, I'll give you a few of them right now. Let's see. I call it a little bit sometimes the Cinderella effect, and that is the accounting department is the weak little stepsister off in the corner, and they don't have good financial systems. Therefore, there's not a lot of trust in the financial statements. I see all the time. What I'm saying, this next little quick story is I said, how much faith do you have in the financial statements? And it was like a boisterous 100%. Then why am I seeing balance sheet items on the income statement? I see that at least once a month.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how much faith do you have in your financial statements when you see stuff like that? And we talked about owner dependency. Other dependencies are really important. First one is people look at as customers. You have a dominant customer. Do you have 3 customers doing 80%? That's a risk to your business.
Mm-hmm.
And then the owner says, but I've been a customer for 2 decades and we're buddies. Yeah, they're not buddies with the new owner.
Yeah.
So supplier dependencies. I've seen banks do due diligence on a company supplier when they were pretty much a sole source for who they were going to lend money to. Landlord can be a dependency and an issue. Got to have a long-term lease if you're borrowing money. And of course, key employees. We have one employee who designs products. We have one employee who does this. What if they get hit by a Pepsi truck?
Right.
And then there's another one is, I call it the 3 I's. IP, IT, and incentive. So we know what IP is. It's have it, it's protected, and show how it creates value. I mean, IT is everywhere. You can't pick up a publication on business or a website and not usually see something about cybersecurity, hacking, all of that. Using technology rather than just having it. I work with a company now. I'm on the board, and they've got a very big, expensive ERP system. And right now, they're talking about how do we shed modules because we're not using them. And then incentives. I think back to an owner who he really wanted every last dollar. His buyers came in, put in there's a lot of people doing inside sales, put in an incentive program in, And people were getting paid a lot more, but they did a lot more, and they grew at 75% in the first year. If he had not been so greedy and had put in a good compensation plan, he would have sold it for a lot more.
That's eye-opening right there, isn't it? You think about the fact that a lot of these folks are trying to take as much money off the table as they can while they're running the business because, they feel like they've earned it, they deserve it, and so on. But sometimes that's a very short-sighted approach because, like you just said, incentivize your people properly and they will help you grow the business.
Yeah.
The flip side of that, of course, is also bringing in the right people, right? If you bring in the wrong people and you give them the wrong incentives, it doesn't really work out properly. So making sure you have an advisor or someone on your team that can help understand those proper incentives, I think is important too.
Yeah, well, people are very often the number one asset of the business, but they don't show up on a balance sheet.
Yep. Yeah, one line of goodwill, right? That's about it.
Yeah, and you get goodwill. Goodwill is created by having profits, and your profits are created by not just your product or service, but by the people making that product or performing that service.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then I would say one more, Jeff, is growth. Be growing. I see so many companies, look, the owner gets to a point they're making a lot of money. I don't care if that everything is relative. It could be $500,000, $1 million, $2 million, and they say, why would I want to take the risk to grow it? I am doing really well.
Mm-hmm.
And a buyer looks at it and the skeptical nature says they've tried every possible means to grow the business and it just can't grow. So growth is to show that you can grow, and what you did to achieve that growth is important. And as a very smart person, president of a major corporation division, said to me, growth hides a lot of operational warts. And you grow, and then you go and fix the warts.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a challenge too, right? Because a lot of the times, especially when you're a good operator, you want to just fix all the problems, but you realize that, sales and revenue and marketing, advertising is sometimes more important than just perfecting your systems, because you spend time, money, and energy fixing your systems, but you don't have more people going through there. What was the point, right?
Yeah.
Maybe eventually it'll work out, but it's always good to have that growth. I agree with that. So last question for you, John, before we wrap up here. We talked about founder owners getting ready to sell, getting ready to exit. We know that they want to make money. They want to increase the enterprise value of their business before they do that so they can, maximize their profits on when they do sell. But are there any things that are more important to some of these sellers than money?
We didn't talk about this in advance, but I would say, boy, you're sure covered in something we talked about, because it is such an important question. Legacy. I would say, my experience, 80 to 90% of business owners selling, and we're talking about a decent sized business. We don't work with the Main Street companies. I want to see my people taken care of.
Yeah.
It's just as important as the money. Yes, the money matters. And don't take me wrong, but they look at it and say, well, if I'm going to get X million for my business and then I got to pay taxes and I got to pay fees, this is what I'm left with. But they want their people taken care of. They want to see the name of the business on the door, show their kids, show their grandkids, that was my company. And it doesn't happen all that often, but I have seen not the highest offer get the deal, because it's the right buyer, right? Values line up. They know they're going to take care of the people, all of that.
I think that's really important, especially the further along you get in your career. I think that we're working through an acquisition right now with a 27-year-old seller. Not the business is 27 years old. He's 27 years old, and grew a business really quickly and did really well and just focused on one niche, and it worked out. And for him, it's more his appetite and reason for selling is, I want the business to keep running, but I really just want enough money to go do the other thing that I really want to do and spend my time on. And when the conversation came up about the people, he's like, well, they may or may not stay. I don't know. It's like versus another company that's 100 years old that we're helping through an acquisition. Say, we need to make sure these 75 employees keep their jobs and have security and stability. And we want to make sure that the name of the company does not change, right? Very different conversations. And I think it's really important for anyone who's going to be acquiring a business to understand that. And especially if you are a seller or if you're building a business, and we didn't talk a lot about this. I really do subscribe to the build your business to sell it. Don't just build it because you want an income, because that's a terrible way to get an income if that's all you want. It takes a long time to make the kind of income you really like in most cases. But build it to create that value and sell it. And then the more you do that, I think this is also where that pride of ownership comes in. If you're doing this, all of a sudden you are providing value to so many other people, not just your customers, but also your employees and your vendors and your shareholders and your family, of course, the local economy at large. And so I think there's a lot of pride that comes with building a business the right way, because once you get over and out of that hair on fire, doing all the jobs, and you can finally start to grow the company properly, it does really create that pride for the owner. And I think you're exactly right that a lot of those people, once they've gone through all that, they've got all the scars and the bruises to show for it, they want to make sure that it continues, right? They don't want to think, oh, I spent 20 years doing this and now all I got at the end of the day was a nice big paycheck. It's the equivalent of getting the Timex or the Rolex at the end of your 20 plus year career at some company, and then here you go, a nice little watch to remember us by, right? I think people want to have something a little bit more valuable than that.
Yeah, I agree. I agree 100% that is a huge motivating factor on picking who you're going to sell to, when you're going to sell, etc.
Wonderful. So, John, we need to wrap up here. We're at time, but why don't you tell folks how they can find you, how they can find your book, and connect with you online?
Well, the book is on Amazon with my other books, and they can go to our website, which is nokomisadvisory.com, NOKOMIS advisory.com, and you can call from there. They can fill out a contact form, peruse the hundreds of blog posts and articles and podcasts and videos and all of that.
Beautiful.
I thank you for having me on.
Absolutely, John. Thanks so much for being here. You've been listening to or watching another episode of Angels, Exits, and Acquisitions from Angel Investors Network, and you're here today with myself, Jeff Barnes, and John Martinka. John, thanks so much for being here today.
All right. Thank you for having me.
Take care.